Hi, this is Andrew Twidwell, owner of ABT Plumbing and Electric Heat and Air. Once again, with the show You Got This. It's a show of DIY do's and don'ts. And I am virtually working with Rosalie right now, who's down in lovely cold LA. It's actually colder in LA than it is here in Auburn today, like by 10 degrees. It's substantial. We were just talking about off camera about, or off the air about how cold this or how mild this spring and summer have been. And we particularly, since we do heating and air, it's like we usually see an uptick in business because of the temperature rising, and we have not seen it. And I've got some friends down in the LA market, and they really haven't seen it. And they're jonesing because it's usually, especially like in Riverside stuff, where it's usually like 100 degrees by now, and it's been hitting like 75, 80 maybe. So yeah, it's been crazy, huh?
So I'm at 64 degrees today. And I think I've brought this up before. Okay, so like Crimea River, I know I get
Yeah,
sunshine a lot of the time, but
yeah,
there really is a thing here that's called May gray and June gloom. So people think that it's always sunny, and actually we're in our gray season, and it's awful
yeah,
because the temperatures aren't so cold that you're like bundled up in jackets, but it's definitely not warm enough to be enjoying outside. And also, I lived in Michigan, and my biggest complaint about Michigan, the thing that made it hardest to live there was actually the amount of time the sky is gray. It's kind
right,
of like the Seattle thing, right? So you
yeah,
don't know how much that matters to you
yeah,
until it's gray a lot. And
yeah,
so it was gray most of May. We're halfway through June. It's gray still, and the temperatures are just not where they're supposed to be. So I would say that everybody in the HVAC world in California right now is probably not
yeah.
having the summer they thought they were going to have.
They weren't. They're not. We're doing great just because we have an amazing crew, and we're actually, I think we're up 100% over last year. Right now, 150% over last year. So, but yeah, once again, toot our own horn because we've got a stellar install crew and a stellar service department. So our people are doing really well. So yeah. But in any event, it has been kind of a weird season this year for weather. I know it's been raining off and on, and I know it's been raining off and on down in LA. And this is California. We normally don't see any rain until from like May through October, November
Yeah,
typically, and yeah, and we're seeing a lot. So it's weird. Great for fire season. I mean, definitely going to keep the fire season down, hopefully.
I
But
hope so.
yeah, at least push it back a little further as opposed to starting so early. It didn't start it in last year. It started in May, I think, the fire season, or even earlier than that, right? And it's just all the fires in Canada. That's a whole other story. But anyway, it's been a weird season. But I've been getting out and enjoying it. It's been nice, and it's been kind of nice and mild for bike riding, which has been great in hiking. So it's not, you're not dying when you're out there, and you don't have to wake up at 5 a.m. and get out by 6:30 to make sure you don't sweat to death. Um, that part's been nice. So, but yeah,
Well, you're probably going to ask me something, and I'm going to say I've just been working. But the one thing I was thinking,
I've been doing that too. But I
I
get outside.
no. I
I had
just
a
meant
good
like
weekend. Yeah,
I've had my head down, so I haven't. So the
yeah,
outside conditions aren't that bad. But
yeah,
I'm so confused. Is this weekend Father's Day weekend? I
yeah.
think it is. Oh wow.
Yeah, so
Okay.
Bluegrass Festival's happening this weekend as well. So it's it's kind of a minor celebration in our family. But yeah, Mother's Day is much larger. But in any event,
Yes.
yeah, it is Father's Day this weekend. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
just a reminder
So
if anyone
do,
needs to anyone needs to call their dad or send a card, you
right.
still have time. Maybe, probably not though. By the time you hear this,
I
so
was
you guys,
texting my kids this Mother's Day. I'm like, you guys, don't forget to text mom.
oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah, that's a
One of
big
them
one.
forgot. Yeah,
Oh, that's not good.
yeah,
Okay, so I have a question for you. So are you, because you're pretty family oriented, which is a good thing. Are you guys
yeah.
gonna get together and do anything festive for the Day of Fathers?
No, no, we don't normally do anything. And yeah, one kid's in another country, living in another
All
country,
right,
and I
all
might
right.
I might see my daughter. I don't know. But we're actually, oh my God, you'll love this. So we are doing something kind of special, just my wife and I. We're going to go see Pablo Cruz on Friday.
Oh, okay. Remind me who that is again? I don't.
I know, right? It was like it was a little. You're younger than me by a little bit, and I'm a little younger than my wife. And it was a big. They were big in the '70s, and but I was listening to much different music than she was. So growing up in San Francisco, I was listening to a little more eclectic and alternative stuff. Um, but she was a big Pablo Cruz fan. Her and her best friend, and so we're going with her and her best friend to go see Pablo Cruz on Friday night. So that's gonna be interesting. Yeah,
That'll be fun though. That'll be
that's our
fun.
celebration.
I
Yeah,
know the name. I know the name, but I can't think of why. I mean, when I think about the music I grew up on versus what I listen to now, I'm like, oh wow. Like I don't know. Like when you're a kid, you don't have any control over the music you're
right,
exposed to because it's your parents, right, or
right,
whoever.
or just the
And
whatever's on the radio. Yeah,
right. And so I'm
yeah,
like, oh, my transition. I stopped transitioning musically in the '90s, and I just stayed there. So as you know, so if it was called grunge at any time, it's probably still on my playlist.
yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting to but you know these concerts are so much fun though because like it really like for Betty it's probably going to evoke a bunch of cool memories and stuff. So
And
that's
especially
always
with her,
fun.
and this is a friend that
Yeah.
she grew up with, and they were listening. They were talking about she bought her a mirror that had Pablo Cruz song and a
Oh,
rainbow on it, and then her friend
oh,
bought her the exact same mirror for Christmas. So it was one of those. I mean, it's a big thing for them, and she knows
oh, that's
all the
cool.
songs. She didn't listen to them today. I mean, like yeah, same thing, but I mean, we've moved on as well. But it'll be fun little thing, and it'll be fun with her friends. I really like this that couple. So yeah,
So we're
it'll be
gonna call
interesting.
this is we're gonna call this your Father's Day celebration. So if you were
Exactly.
not though, but if you were a traditional Father's Day celebrator, isn't this the holiday where like if you wanted tools or something cool,
Yeah.
that it would be a good idea to kind of like bring it up or go buy it
Yeah,
yourself
make
and
little
say,
hints. Yeah,
right, like,
yeah,
hey, honey, this is what you bought me for Father's Day. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, I feel like this is a really good time for like the guys in the tool industry or like Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever. You know, like this is a time to go
yeah.
get your buy yourself
Tools
a
and
present.
barbecues. Tools and
Yeah.
barbecues are the big sellers this time of year. So yeah, yeah,
Well, if you're celebrating Father's Day this weekend, we hope you have a good time. Keep it
yeah.
safe. And all the dads out there, super cool. I do apologize. I totally forgot this is Father's Day weekend. But hey, you're going to hear this on Friday and you're going to go, oh, that's right. I have an excuse to go buy myself a tool because those crazy people on KNCO told me to. I totally
Right.
second that. I think that's a great idea.
We give you authorization. It's Father's Day. Go buy that new skill saw that you wanted, or the cordless toolkit that you wanted, or the lawn care
Absolutely.
equipment,
Absolutely.
or the brand new Weber barbecue or something. Yeah, or the Traeger. Yeah, yeah,
100%. We're on
yeah,
board with that. So let's say we were going to talk about DIY though, Andrew.
yeah. We
What
should move into that.
crafty like so speaking of water, we weren't, but we're going to talk about
Let's
water
move into
this
water.
week.
Yeah. Well, we did. We talked a little bit about rain. So yeah. So
Okay, there we go. That's a
it's
thread.
loose.
That's a
Yeah.
thread. Grab it.
Yeah. So yeah, so once again, my wonderful producer came up with a great topic and put it up on the website as well. So you know, we're going to talk about you think you get a water leak, don't panic. What do you do? So if you are on pipe treated water, most of you that are in the Nevada County area, you're on. And if you have pipe treated, you're on Nevada County Irrigation District. If you're in and even some plaster or if you've got a water meter, it makes everything a lot easier. If you're on a well, it makes it a little bit more interesting. It can be a little bit more difficult because you're not going to really notice it. But we're mainly going to be talking about pipe treated water just because it's a little bit easier to deal with. But it does relay also to some people that if you've got a private well, private domestic system. Um, if you are concerned about a water leak, so say all of a sudden your water uh, bill goes up by a significant amount. Even, I mean, water's relatively cheap, so a significant amount could be just an extra $20 or $50, right? Depending what your bill is as a percentage of the bill, right? So take a look at that. Keep an eye on your water bill because that's going to let you know if you've got something going on. And granted, most people's water bills will typically go up during the summer months because you're going to be irrigating. But if it's, you can look at your history and see if it's gone up over what you were paying last year and kind of get an idea. So there's a couple things that you can do to determine if if you are concerned that you have a water leak. There's a couple of easy things that you can do to diagnose this issue and try to figure out where the problem may be. One of the easiest things you can do, and not only the easiest, but also it is like 90% of the time this is the problem. It's rarely a broken water line. It's typically a toilet, and you don't really think about that, but inside of our toilet, we have a float valve that literally, when the water level in the toilet gets low, it turns the water back on. And sometimes, I'm sure, if you're old enough, I'm sure you've had a toilet where it comes on in the middle of the night and you're like, what is that noise? Or you go into the bathroom and no one's used the bathroom and all of a sudden you hear the valve go on for a few seconds and then turns off. That's indicative of a water leak in, is that the right word? You're laughing at
No,
me.
I'm laughing because in your house, that's indicative of a water leak. In my house, it's indicative of, is there a ghost here? That's the first place I go to. Okay? Like, I feel like it's
You and
not
my daughter Olivia. Yeah.
right. Like, it's not necessarily a water leak. It could be something else. And I will tell you
Could be
on that note.
supernatural. Yeah.
Okay, but you think I'm crazy, but let me explain to you why I say that. Give me 1 minute. So, woke up.
Do tell.
Woke up 2 mornings ago. Now, this wasn't the toilet or water, but this is why I never just dismiss the supernatural. So, woke up the other morning and the fire alarm is just going off in my actual place, like not the
Yeah.
big
The
one.
communal. Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, what? And that, so I take out the, batteries, all that good stuff. I have to call someone out to like replace it or figure out what's wrong with it because it literally is not stopping. And the battery's
Right.
out and it's still going.
Right.
And
'Cause it's powered. Yeah.
yeah.
Got wires.
So then
Yeah.
I start pulling at wires and I start seeing stuff, me and electricity. I'm like, no.
Nope.
So anyway, comes out, swaps it out. Yesterday, the exact same time, 24 hours later, getting out of the shower, and the thing starts going off. And it won't stop. Take out the battery, won't stop, nothing. So I got the guy to come out one more time, and I said, I swear to God, if this happens tomorrow, I'm moving, and you cannot stop me because this is supernatural. Now, today did not happen, so the spell is broken, but my mind always goes to supernatural.
Okay.
Always. Okay,
All right.
Sorry.
So
Sidebar.
short of supernatural
Thank you.
things happening with your toilet,
Thank you.
it is probably you've got a water leak, and
All
that
right.
will. It's amazing how much water a toilet can leak. I mean, you're talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of gallons a month that you could be losing in a toilet, and I see it all the time. So some of the things you can do to check and see if you actually have said water leak is you simply remove the toilet tank lid, look inside, make sure the water level is below the overflow tube, and the overflow tube is that tube that sticks up, and you want to make sure you got about at least half an inch between the top of the water level and the top of that tube, because if it's any closer, there's a chance that it's overfilling and just rolling into the bowl. Check and make sure the water level is correct, because you might need to adjust the fill valve, the float that goes up and down. And if you've got, depending on what you have, just look it up on Google, look it up on YouTube. You can determine how to actually do that. As long as that's good, the next thing you want to do is find a time where you won't have to use that toilet. If it's the only toilet in your house, you're probably going to want to do it later in the day or earlier in the day, like before you go to work. If it's a toilet that you don't use very often, just plan on not using it for a good 8 hours or so. Then you're going to take some food dye and drop some food dye in there. And then if you have a leak at the flapper mechanism, the flush valve, that little thing that pulls up when you flip the lever, if there's a leak there, you're going to find colored water in the bowl of your toilet. And then you have a toilet leak at that flapper. And then it's just a matter of replacing that flapper. And I say it's my nemesis. It's one of the most seemingly simple projects and one of the most difficult projects that we do as a plumber. We have more callbacks on fixing fill valves than anything else, because everybody's product is different, and certain flappers will work with certain products and they won't work with others. And now we've gotten into different size flappers because of low flow and ultra low flow toilets, where the diameter of them are a lot bigger and they will only work with OEM. The best bet is to to take that flapper into the hardware store, that one that was in there, and buy an exact replica, exact same thing. Even if you have to order it, don't get the generic one. Buy an OEM and fix that. Another problem that can happen with a toilet leaking is, surprisingly, is if you have high water pressure. If you have high water pressure, um, everything, all plumbing is designed to work within the parameters of 40 to 80 psi, pounds per square inch of water pressure. So if it's below 40, we have to put in a pump and pump it up. If it's above 80, we have to put a pressure reducing valve in to get the pressure down. 80 is the outside, right? We don't want anything higher than 80. You can go to the hardware store, you can buy a little gauge that goes on the end of a hose bib, and they're like 10, $15. Take it home, check your water pressure. If you've got anything in excess of 80 psi, you know that you need a new pressure reducing valve if you've already got one. They typically last about 10 to 15 years. There's a little rubber piece in there, and chlorine tends to eat away at it. So it's, design obsolescence. It'll last you about 10 years. Or if you don't have one, and NID or your local jurisdiction may have found a new source for water, and the water pressure may have gone up, they're only required to get you water. They're not required to get you water within the parameters of 48 to 80 psi. That's on us. That's on the homeowner. So they just got to get water to your house. You have to regulate the water pressure to working within those 40 to 80 psi. So with high water pressure, it'll actually force that valve to open up. And it typically happens at night when we're not using water. And water, particularly like if you take a bath or something like that, use a lot of hot water. A lot of cold water goes back into the hot water heater, or not hot water heater, into the water heater. And as that water heats up, it expands. And so if you've already got high water pressure, now all of a sudden you're expanding that water inside that water heater, and you're greatly increasing the water pressure inside the home. So we've seen situations where we'll use a gauge that has a lazy dial where the water pressure will push this little indicator up, and it'll set back down. So it'll be fine. Looking at it during the day, it'll be like 70, 80 psi. But at night, we'll see pressures of 120, 150 psi, and it will make the water heater, or it'll make the toilet run. So then you need a whole other thing. Then you need an expansion tank, but that's a whole other subject. But in any event, high water pressure will also cause a toilet to leak. So those are the two things that are really, really critical on a toilet. That is the number one cause of high water bills.
I was just gonna ask you if when you guys kind of do your diagnosis, when you go into a home, are those kind of the two more common things that are causing the issue?
Those are what we're going to look for. We're going to look at that first. We're going to look at the toilet. We're going to dye tab it and dye test it. And then we're going to look at the water pressure. Hopefully, we train our guys to always check water pressure. Unfortunately, they're human beings, and we're working on that whole thing. If I could have bots do it, it'd be a lot easier. They would actually consistently do it, but they do it most of the time. But in any event, you want to check the water pressure. Those are the two main things. So once we've ruled that out, then we start looking at other things. Then we start looking at, one of the nice things about water is it's going to show itself, right? If you have a water leak, you're going to have water somewhere, right? So our guys may crawl underneath the house. If you don't want to crawl under your house, don't, if it's hard for you to crawl under the house, don't do it. There are people that do that. You can hire a kid to go underneath your house and take a look and see if you got any water leaks. But the other thing the other place that we're going to look is the water line from the meter to the house. And if you're on pipe treated water, you're going to have a meter, which is great because that actually shows water being used. So what we'll do is we'll isolate that pipe between the house and the meter. And it's really easy. All we do is we turn the water valve off at the water main off at the house, and we leave it on at the meter. And then we're going to look at the meter and see if the little dial moves. And there's a little triangle dial on most water meters, most non-digital meters. There's going to be a little triangle that's going to spin at the very slightest amount of usage. And if that thing's moving at all, sometimes we won't see a movement. We'll mark it and then come back and see if it's moved from that mark. And then we know we've got a situation where we've got a leak between the house and the meter. Now we know that because the nice thing about water is it shows itself. So if it's above ground, we're going to see signs of it, right? It's going to be on the floor somewhere. whether it's under the house or the living room or something like that, right? But when it's underground, you're not going to see it, right? Because it's going to just be absorbed in the soil and or through all the mole holes and things that are underneath our soil. So, but now we know we got a leak there. So now if it's a leak outside, then we're going to be either getting depending on how long the line is, we're going to be getting a leak detection, our leak detecting equipment out there to find the leak, or we're just going to be replacing the whole line. If it's a system that's been installed for 30, 40 years, we're probably going to recommend just replacing the whole line because we can chase leaks for days. I mean, it's happened to me where I'll go in and do a spot repair on one piece and then turn the water on, and the next thing I know, I've disturbed the line that's older than me, and all of a sudden it's leaking 10 feet above it. And it's more expensive for us to do that piecemeal than it is for us to just get a tractor in there and dig the whole trench up and lay a new pipe. So usually if I've got a water leak somewhere in between the meter and the house and it's under 100 feet, I'm just going to recommend replacing the line because it's not going to have a problem unless it's really old. And typically we're talking like 40 or 50 years old or 100 years old. It's not uncommon for us to see lines that have been in the ground for that long. So those are the kind of things that we look for in the obvious things that we look for in water leaks. What are some of the other things you can kind of look for? And this is kind of like, we got this on the website, but you want to look for mold, you want to look for different smells, if it's musty. Those would be kind of indicative.
If you have like a wood floor too, you'll often notice like sponginess when you walk.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you have a wood floor, it's going to start rising in wherever the leak is or start cupping. You'll get a little on the edges as it expands, as the wood expands, it'll start to the ends will start to curl up. So yeah,
I had that happen from a ice maker. The little plastic thing at the back was so old, it either broke or fell apart. But it was just a small enough little drip that the floors started getting spongy over time. And I have no idea what kind of mess that created, but that was just from the ice maker not having the hose prop naturally. I mean that's
like we talk about, like you drop a gallon of milk on the ground, it's a big puddle, and if you got a drip that's only dripping one every 10 seconds, it's only a matter of time before you got a gallon of water that's underneath your floor, and you're talking potentially tens of thousands of dollars to replace it because depending on how old the floor is, you may not be able to get new planks for it. You may have to replace the entire thing, and flooring's not cheap. But that's a great example, because it doesn't take much water. So things to keep an eye on. The other thing you can kind of pay attention to is any kind of strange noises. If you've got like a hammering noise, then you got some other issues going on. But it could cause a water leak, and it could be a pressure issue. But all these things can, like we're saying, can cause significant damage in your home. So it's something you want to be cognizant of about if you start noticing a high water bill. So with that, there's our show. So if you need any help with trying to find these things, if you want to do the diagnostic work yourself, by all means do it. You can kind of rule stuff out and save yourself a little bit of money for the diagnosis and may find something that's a simple repair that you can take care of yourself. If it's a larger one, you can call us out and we'll take care of it. But we can be reached at 530-230-9092. The number again, 530-230-9092. You can find us on the web at abtplumbing.com or easyasabt.com. Like us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We're all over the place these days. We're all on YouTube. We're all on the socials now. You can find these shows on our social media sites, and you can see our mugs on YouTube. With that, thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week. Thanks so much. Bye.